Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Depths, back with another Kamhime project video. This is one I meant to do a while back, but I never really got around to it. But this is a video that's going to cover pretty much all the awakenings at the time of this video, and I'm going by Japanese side, so global versions do not have all of these characters. Basically, this is still my opinion on a lot of these, but they do kind of line up with a lot of agreement for other people as well. But again, there still could be some discrepancies, and plus, I'm not stopping anybody from awakening any of these characters. I'm just telling you what you're in for if you do. And even then, it's the fact that awakening them still give you 80 more points per awakening towards the magic value system that I keep mentioning in multiple videos. It's a leveling system that makes your entire element more powerful based on the levels that all the Hime have of that element. So awakening characters get 160 points total because 160 total levels. Because they get the normal 80, then they also get another 80 from awakening. So they actually are pretty powerful towards that system, just in their own right. But you may or may not want to use your eyes for that, especially since there are other things to get with your dragonic eyes that can be much more important. So that said, this is just a little bit of a quick guide for all that type of stuff. But I'm not necessarily going to show any of the kits because I want to go through this pretty quickly. There's a lot of different characters. But I'll give you the rundown of basically each one. So again, I also have to mention that Awakenings are still an improvement on their previous kit, but if it's not that much of an improvement, it's not really worth it. So just got to point that out. Starting with Gaia. Her awakening really boosts her defensive potential for both herself and the whole team. And it is a very good awakening. It is future proof because she's the first one to get an awakening and she is still very good for quite a lot of content, so definitely worth it. I never knew how to pronounce her name. It's spelled Tyr basically. But she's kinda better with her awakening, but there's much better options if you're going to go for a thunder character to awaken. And she could be helpful, but she's very outclassed. So that said, I would probably skip her unless you really just want, a better increase to her kit because she can still debuff a bit, and she's still got a bit of methods to try and up her damage, but it's nothing that stands out. Plus, a lot of things I focus on self tend to get outweighed by AoE because AoE has a very big focus later on. So there's that. Speaking of which, Thor. She ups a few things. She has the best paralyze in the game, I think, which is like 30 seconds. But the thing is, a lot of later enemies start getting very resistant towards certain things and outright immune in some cases. There are paralysis immunities in some of these raids that are higher up, like the Guardian Plus raids, the malicious raids, stuff like that. So, that said, Thor falls off extraordinarily quick. She wasn't that good to begin with because she does have some ability damage and then also again the paralyze, but that's all she really brings, and there's others that bring it better, so Thor is easily one to skip for awakenings. Susanoo, she's much better on the ability damage, and then on top of that too, she can also self-buff herself and then self-heal. She's not too bad, but it's just like TYR. You can skip her, so there you go. In fact, she does ability damage much better than Thor does, if you want to be honest. But, of course, you're not going to use a Dark character on the Thunder team, so that's not a really fair comparison. But at the same time, if they were going to up somebody's ability damage, then Susanoo is definitely a start. But again, she's outclassed, and there's nothing to stand out. So there you go. Now Sevarog would be an even better case of all that, but again, unfair to compare different elements. But what Sevarog does, she ability nukes very frequently. And then on top of that, she also is upping her own burst gauge. I think she now AoE buffs the team because of an update for some of her abilities. But again, she's outclassed. Now, she's probably one of the better ability damaging characters right now, but she's still like overtaken by quite a few characters on the global side, and then even more later down the line once we start catching up to the Japanese list. So Sevarog is again an outclassed teammate, but out of all the ones I've talked about so far, she's probably the most worth an awakening outside of Gaia. So there's that. Titania, you kind of want to like her more because her buffs are actually pretty good for single target, but that's the issue. They're all just single target, and there's other characters that, again, do it better, mainly because they're AoE. So, that said, she's another one that's, like, decent, but, again, you can skip her awakening. So, there you go. Ares, oh man, I'd like to have Ares, like, be worth more than what I'm going to say, but unfortunately it's not the case. She's honestly worth an awakening more than Sevarog in my eyes, but it's just the fact that she's again outclassed. Fire has gotten a lot more powerful. There's a lot more powerful Hime. Personally, I feel like they need to go back and redo a lot of these awakened characters for Fire, and quite a few other ones as well. She hits pretty hard, and then on top of that too, she again does some pretty decent ability damage. It's just that Sevarog would nuke more often. But again, outclassed. Not much I can say about that one. So she's decent, but again, outclassed. Now Soul. Now, overrated fandom aside, because she really does have an overrated fandom, she still is a very good character. And she's again like Gaia future-proof. So awakening her is not a bad option. She's still used in some content, especially when it comes to the Dark Malicious raid. She can remove debuffs off your team. She can give herself an ascension increase as well. So that may or may not cut back on some of your essential weapons if you want to take that option. But she debuffs, she can remove buffs, she can heal and cleanse at the same time, which is what we call when you remove debuffs. So she's actually pretty future proof, and her heal isn't that bad either. It's a pretty sizable heal with regen to get tacked on it too. She's definitely worth the awakening. She really is. In fact, I'd say she's probably one of the top candidates for an awakening because of how she works. So, that said, definitely awaken her. And in my opinion, Gaia should also be awakened too. And if you are going to do that method where you go off element, then yeah, she's one of the ones you probably could use off element. But again, not something I recommend. And it's the same case with Gaia too. Soul and Gaia can work off element to an extent as well. Just don't rely on it if you have somebody that can heal or cut or whatever for those elements. It's good for the early game, but it's not good for later down the line. You need same element. Now, Hades, some people say she's not worth the awakening. Personally, I think it depends, because her awakening will go against somebody else later down the line, but they both work well in their own ways. She's a pretty defensive character when you awaken her, and she's really not that bad. Like, she's pretty good at what she does. It's like some decent debuffing. She gives some protection to the team and all that. It's just that, again, she can conflict with another awakening later down the cover, so it's really up to you. But personally, I do say she is indeed worth the awakening. She's just not top priority. EA, my suggestion, do not awaken her. She does get an insane amount of combo rate, like an insane amount of self combo rate, but other than that, she doesn't really have anything. Like, she doesn't get that much better than her original. They upped the crap out of her combo rate to where she gets like a natural, I think, 60% for triple attack or something like that. But it's not all that great compared to everything else in her kit, and then how other characters can still do stuff better. So definitely not worth the awakening for her. Satan, again, another character I would like to have, like, I'd like to say she has more value than what it is, but honestly, she's another outclassed character, and it's just like Susanoo. It's just like Sevarog. She's not bad, it's just that there's better. especially considering that her main thing was also her debuff frame for her defense down, and it's covered by other characters as well. So she can conflict with that. You don't want to have characters that have the same debuff frame. Now, same buff frame is a different story. You can just alternate it, but when it comes to debuffs, you cannot alternate that. So that said, Satan, not exactly worth the awakening, but she is still decent. So it's more like a case if you really don't have anything else, and you may or may not use her anyway, depending on who you have. So unfortunately, I'd have to say she's meh. Same case with Uriel. She bursts like crazy. She has a very strong burst, and that's basically it. Like she can really build up her burst, and that's basically it. There's other characters that can do this stuff better, even AoE for the team and all that. I can't say she's worth it that much either. I mean, it's still decent, but again, another meh type of awakening. Same thing with Odin too. It's just that Odin, she's outclassed, and in this case, she's not even that good of an awakening. Just standing out, her kit is just pretty underwhelming from how she is normally to an awakening. Definitely not worth it. Definitely should skip her. Same case with Brahma too. Brahma is like Uriel in a different way. It's like the self buffing for her gives her a crap ton of like vigor, which is very helpful. And a vigor buff goes outside your weapon. She can easily hit that 200% vigor just on her own. But again, outclassed, very niche. Just skip her. Now, Akawa. This one, some people may disagree with me on this one, but I think she definitely is worth the awakening because of the fact that she is pretty good for the AoE. Especially considering she has an ability that puts distortion on enemies that forces them to act like, well, they don't go into rage mode, but the game treats them like they're raging when it comes to like certain abilities and all that. Which ties into her kit where she can give an AoE Rage Punish to the whole team, upping their damage output. Rage Punish is in its own multiplier. It is a very, very strong damage spike. So, she's actually pretty decent in my opinion. She can be worth the awakening. You just need to know how to use her. And unfortunately, if you do have somebody like Hector, or even a later character in the case of Global, but they already had the crossover for Japanese. If you have that character from the Ayakashi crossover, the Fire Wolf Girl, I think she is, then you could use her instead of Akala. So you can instead save the eyes. You could use both together too, and have more Rage Punish. Fire can get like 3 Rage Punishes with Akala, that crossover character I mentioned, and with Hector. But again, it all depends. She's worth an awakening, but she's not top priority. So, another case of that. But now we're getting into some really good ones. Now, Michael, I would say that if not Soul, Michael is top priority for awakening. Because she really buffs the team. She really speeds up their burst rate. And honestly, even though you don't really want double attack compared to triple attack, the double attack still lasts for a very long time. So it's got pretty good uptime on it and it's still helping your combo rate. Michael is extraordinarily good. You should definitely awaken her. Especially considering the fact that every time she bursts, the entire team is getting burst gauge. So the ones that already burst start off with an extra 20. The ones behind her need 20 less burst gauge in order to actually pull it off. My strategy tends to have her in front of some characters that are very slower, like much slower on the burst fill, so they don't have to fill as much. But no matter how you use her, she's a very, very good help to the team. She even has some elemental resistance in the form of dark resistance, so that can help you out too. And that's something I forgot to mention with Soul, but Soul needs the burst for it. Michael just busts outright. So, and the two work very well together too. So, Michael's another top priority for awakening if you're using any light characters. Same case with Poseidon. She's a very, very good defensive character for water. Like, she really helps out for the defense. So, again, another very good awakening character. And she's got one of those special passes where if an enemy's hit with a specific debuff, then the entire team gets a little bit more defensive. meaning that you're just getting like free damage reduction basically just by having a specific debuff on an enemy, and it's not one that they'll resist that easily. So there you go for that one. Metatron, I would say she's like EA and like Uriel. It's like maybe some really niche situations she's worth it, but I wouldn't awaken her. I would say she's better than Uriel because she can burst 3 times in a row. Like, I haven't seen a single character that can sit and do that yet. There's some that got 2 in a row, but never 3 in a row. And I mean naturally 3 in a row, which means she can really do 4 in a row with an already full gauge. So it's like, it's kind of niche with her. You don't really want to awaken her unless you really have nothing else to do. And there's been a few cases where she's actually been pretty useful for some things, like the guild competition as well. And at the time of this video, there is a guild competition, but she's not one of the top picks for it now. So that said, I honestly leave it up to you. She could be worth, but she's really outclassed. So there's that. Same case goes for Marduk. She used to be part of what you would call the Thunder Trio. She's still very good, but again, outclassed. And it's just like Metatron, she's got some good bursting capabilities. She's got some other stuff in her kit as well that helps out the team. It's just the fact that it's like, again, outclassed. So it's another case of up to you. She can be worth it, but depending on how you use her. And I can honestly say the same for Raphael too, because Raphael is a lot better than people give credit for. Now, I'm not saying this because of bias, because again, she's my most favorite character in the game, like just appearance and personality wise, but her kit does more than what people give credit, because first off, you may not get the effect of the dizzy in the higher raids, but it can still land, which in turn gives her that same passive like Awakened Poseidon, where your team gets a little bit more defense. She also has very, very powerful abilities when used right, in the form of her orb removal, which to my knowledge Light doesn't have that much of. She can extend orbs, but that cooldown is still pretty long, so you have to be very quick on moving through your turns. But some enemies are resistant towards that orb extension, so you may not get that much use out of it. And then there's also the Rage Bar Drain. The Rage Bar Drain also doubles as her defense down, her attack down, so it'll give you like a dark attack down and a normal attack down. It's actually a pretty sizable total, but unless you're doing a dark raid, it's like really cut down. But the biggest thing about it is the Rage Bar. It eats up a Rage Bar, and there's some fights where you definitely want to get enemies out of rage as soon as possible. Direct drains are the way to go for that. Her kit is a lot better than people would give credit for. I'm being honest here. Does that make her worth it? Not exactly. Because if you want to be honest, there's other light characters that are more worth the awakening. But she can be worth the awakening. So it's like, she can be worth it, but she's not top priority, if I'm going to be honest. Like I said, I love her. She's my most favorite character from this game. Her kit is a lot better than people would think. But it's not a top priority kit either. So, there's that. Same case with Kuchulain. Kuchulain gets combo rate like a champ. She gets burst gauge increase like crazy. But she's all self-buffing and all that type of stuff too. And it's just like a few other characters I mentioned. It is way too selfish of a kit. That said, she still could be possibly worth the awakening, depending on who else you have. But I wouldn't say she's top priority. But she really can lay on the damage. It is pretty good, actually. Now, somebody that can also do that is Shiva, but she's like buffing the entire team. She gives so many powerful offensive buffs for the entire team, especially a Stinger one too, which is a bit underrated. Stinger buffs are very, very good, because when you start using Elemental Advantage a lot more, Stinger definitely helps you out quite a lot. Shiva is worth the awakening. She is absolutely worth the awakening. She's one of the top awakening priorities for water, if you ask me. So, that said, definitely worth it. Same case for Azazel. My god, I wish I had her, because it's like Shiva turned up to 11. Azazel has some very, very good AoE capability for buffs, because the team gets boosted the crap out of her buffs. It is insane. We've nicknamed the the Caspar buff from that soul, the S-Class Gun Soul. We've nicknamed her buff the Aussie buff. That should say enough like that. And Caspar's buff is pretty long too, just like Azazel's. So if you can maintain that, your win team is going to get really beefed up with Azazel's Awakening. Definitely worth awakening her. Cthulhu, she's one of those ones where it's like, her kit is good, but she fell off. It is the same case like Marduk. It's because the later raids resist a lot of what she did best, and it was another orb control character. It's just that she's not going to land it now. She still has some orb control, but when it comes to the main part of her kit, it doesn't really land. And she has a rare debuff frame too. C frame is not easy to find, but again, she's another one that kind of fell off. She's worth the awakening, just not top priority. Now, Raikou, again, like Poseidon, very defensive, very good for the awakening too. Definitely should awaken her. And like Marduk, she was part of the trio, but she hasn't fallen off though. Raikou is still very, very good. Still even used in some of the later content, like the malicious raids. She is still very, very good to have. So awaken her. High priority for Thunder. Moving on, we have Eros. She's one of those characters that is... it's so-so at worst, but she's still pretty good at best. It's not top priority awakening for her, but her kit is still very valuable. Because she's got a debuff, of course. Debuffs are pretty powerful later off in the game because you start getting hit pretty hard. You need to start landing your attack and defense down to end these fights as safely as possible. And then on top of that too, she has a special type of debuff cancel, where she puts an ailment protection on the team that also gives them burst gauge when they get hit with an ailment. It is very, very useful for quite a lot of fights. A lot of dark fights cast debuffs on your team, and this helps towards that. And it even speeds up burst cycles, which, ironically, when she bursts, that ability comes back even faster. So, you can get a good burst cycle going, and start eating away at any debuffs that are cast on you. So, that's pretty good. She also gives a barrier and a defense up, which will stack with cut. So, a lot of her defensive buffs will stack with other characters. There's a few that will clash with her, but not many. And as far as I know, the ones that do clash with her are limited anyway, so you may not have them. So her awakening is definitely worth it. Thanatos, another high priority target for awakening. Thing is, she is a lot selfish with a lot of her kit, but she does have that defense down, which is very, very helpful. But she's also upping the team's normal attack damage as well, depending on what she does, so at least she spreads some of it. She's actually a pretty high priority target for awakening on Dark, so she's definitely worth it. But she's going to be basically like a few other characters I mentioned before. She's more focused towards like combo rate and burst and all that. But at the same time, she can still spread some attention to the team. So, definitely worth it. Ash Raya. The best way I could sum her up is a little bit of Shiva mixed with a little bit of Mike. And she's definitely worth awakening in my opinion. A very high priority awakening target for water. In my opinion, it's hard to say who's better between her and Shiva. It really is. Both are very good in their own right. And then they both also carry the Stinger buffs. If you take both of them awakened, you can alternate the Stinger buff and have permanent uptime on Stinger. So, that's another strategy. She's definitely worth it, but to say who's worth it more between her and Shiva, it's kind of hard to call. But she definitely is worth the eyes. Same case with Yamaraja, or they call her Emma in the Japanese version. She has a crap ton of debuffing capabilities, and some of them are still worth it in the end. She has some ailment block as well. She has some buffing for the team. She's just a very good all-rounder. They call her tricky, but she's more closer to a Kamhime. She's very good. She's very good. She's worth the awakening for fire. Hostor, another very good awakening target too. I can't say she's top priority, but she is a very good awakening character because of the debuffs and the buffs she can step into support with, so that's also pretty good. If I remember correctly, she also has element protection, but I'm not sure. But I haven't used her in a long time though, because I had other wing characters that can support the team more, so she can indeed fall off depending on who you have, but it takes a lot to push her off your team anyways. So she can actually be worth it. Now, Nephthys is another one that kind of clashes with another awakening that I'm going to talk about later. And it's hard to tell who's better between the two. They're both a lot single target focused, but they hit like trucks. And the thing with Nephthys is the fact that when she bursts, all of her abilities get a cooldown reduction. A pretty substantial one. Some of them come immediately off a cooldown no matter what. She is strong when used correctly. She bursts very hard because she's one of the rare ones to get a 4 million burst cap when done correctly. It's just that she would clash with somebody else. In my opinion, she's worth the awakening, but she clashes with somebody else. So I'll again cover that when I get to that point. Frey, I will say this right now, if you're doing auto ability battle, and I forgot to mention that with quite a few other characters, but if you're doing auto ability battle, she's not worth it. If you are not, she is extremely worth it, because she has some very, very powerful buffs in her kit. And I will say this right now, if you have Frey awakened and Michael awakened, along with Yuri's weapon, her light lance, you're pretty much on your way to a team that can burst 4 times out the gate during burst time. It is a very powerful combination. I've even done a video on that. But you need Frey awakening, you need Mike awakening, you need Yuri's light weapon. But even as a standalone character, Frey is very powerful with her awakening. She has a crap ton of AoE capability, all thanks to her 4th skill. And even in her 1st skill is indeed like very powerful. It just fills up burst gauge by quite a lot. If the enemy is raging, she's just even more powerful. She even has a rage punish that she can just AoE spread to the team. If you have the light version of EA, they go extraordinarily well together, and it's still part of the quad burst team. So, well, one of the quad burst teams, I should say. So, again, another character that's really, really worth it. Honestly, she's right behind Mike and Soul as top awakening priority for light, so there you go. Aphrodite. Oh man, she's one I wish would have more value, but she honestly is outclassed now that Phoebe's in the game. But she does have some very decent stuff in her kit. She's another healer for water, and they have a bit of a healer fetish, just like Light kinda does. But the thing with Aphrodite is the fact that she heals, she has some debuff removal, and then on top of that, she has a combo rate increase in the form of triple attack, which is pretty good too. It could even occasionally help when it comes to the raid fights, depending on your setup and all that. But if you have other healers, I would say don't awaken her. If you have Nike Unleashed or if you have Phoebe, don't worry about awakening Aphrodite. It's all dependent on if you have other healers. So that's all I gotta say for her. Mars. Very, very good supportive character. It says attack, but she's more support because she has like debuffing capability, she has buffing capability, she has like a bit of turn control as well. Like a bit of buff control, I remember correctly, but the thing is, you have to awaken her for her to get her real full potential. And it's an elemental resistance debuff too, which isn't that common. Mars is definitely worth the awakening. But she's kind of up there with Yamaraja when it comes to awakening priority. Like, there's still other characters I'd say could be more worth the awakening. But she's a pretty high target for that. So there you go. Same case with Ariane Rod. Now she's just like Nephthys, where she's like pretty selfish with a lot of her stuff, but she is again another character that can hit like a truck. And like Thor, she has a paralyze. So again, she can be pretty good with that paralyze early on, but when enemies start resisting it the paralyze isn't that reliable if it even lands. And then on top of that too, she still has other stuff in her kit anyway that still makes up for all that type of stuff. She nukes pretty hard with bursts, with ability damage. She's just good. So definitely worth the awakening. Now then, remember when I said Hades clashed with somebody? Pluto is the person she clashed with. Those two can be pretty defensive, but Pluto gives up some offensive buffs to go with it as well. And it really depends on who you want to use more between the two. My personal opinion, Pluto leans more towards an awakened priority than Hades, because Pluto's got more to give to the table on top of her burst actually getting stronger. But again, it's up to you on who you want to awaken more. Nothing stopping you from using both as well, because you'll be pretty tanky for a lot of stuff. Except for maybe the light malicious, because there's a specific reason for that. But again, definitely worth the awakening. She's worth the eyes. Mammon, another one that's worth the eyes. She hits pretty hard. She hits even harder if you manage to get all the stacks of Snatch, so that puts her pretty well together with Caspar, especially given Caspar buffs too. Mammon is definitely worth the awakening. She's pretty selfish with a lot of her kit, but it's like she still hits so hard that it makes up for it. It's another one of those that hits like a truck. So, my opinion, she can be worth the awakening. She's not top priority, but she can be worth the awakening. She's like, I would say behind somebody like Raiko for awakening priority. So there you go. Chernobog. I said that Nephthys clashed with somebody. Chernobog's who she clashes with. Chernobog gets some insane normal attack damage, and she can do a lot of normal attacks. Combined with Paracelsus, it's extraordinarily what you can do with her. But that's the thing, it is all normal attack focused. If you're not focused towards normal attacks, then Chernobog would lose out to Nephthys very, very easily. But she still is very worth the awakening. Now, if you're not focused on normal attacks, or if that's not the only thing you're working for, then I'd say Nephthys would actually edge out over Chernobog. It's up to you, though, who you want to use more. Again, nothing stopping you from using both. In fact, Chernobog would still go very well with Thanatos and Nephthys, if you want to try and get really offensive. But it's still the fact that it's like, it depends on who you want to awaken more as a priority. So, again, Chernobog's very up there for awakening priority. Now then, Ryu-Oh. She's another case of a character that's better than what people probably give credit. Like Raphael, her kit is pretty powerful in its own right. It's just situational. But it's less situational than Raphael because of the fact that she has an attack and defense down that goes up to 30%. It is very, very large. And when she bursts, she is guaranteed to land those. So even if an enemy is just stupidly resistant, she will land those. She also has an orb extension, but some later fights might resist that. It still does some ability damage too, so it's still not wasted. It's just that it's just not as strong as it could be. But the first two skills, very, very powerful for all that. But that's all she really has. So, again, she's not a top priority target. She's not even like mid-priority target if you want to be honest, but she can be good if you use her correctly. I use her in the Fire Malicious raid because that's some very good debuff support, and you need to hit 75% in the Malicious raids. You need to hit 75% total, because there's something later on in those fights where we can't sit up and deal with it outside of just debuffing more. Because enemies will buff themselves, and we can't remove it. So you need more debuffs to offset it. She's very good for that type of fight. So, it all depends. But, again, she's not even high priority, so you could skip her if you want. Same case with Aether. She is... First off, she buffs you in Exceed quite a lot, because she's, like, very good for burst buffing. But, that's kind of all she really does. And she also has a pretty strong burst herself, but again, another case of somebody that's outclassed. So, there you go. So again, another character that's not that priority. Jupiter, we just got her for the Awakening. She has some support capabilities through buffs and all that too. She has that rage bar drain, like I tried to emphasize before. Don't underestimate the rage bar drain. She also hits pretty hard as well, so there's that as well. Jupiter is, I can't say she's top priority or even high priority, but she's definitely like up there for a decent amount of priority. I would say more than Marduk, but less than like Mammon and Raiko. But she is pretty good, so she could be worth it. Depends on how you feel about that one. Now, going further is all characters that we don't have on the global side just yet. And I can't really give my full opinion on some of these characters, but again, I'm going to just go off of what I know from their previous amounts of their kit. So, Daki Awakened. Extraordinarily good. Her base kit is very, very powerful. And I know about her Awakened kit. It gets even more powerful. And interestingly enough, her elemental resistance buff, it goes up to 50%. Kaisers get that type of buff, only it's just like them for 2 turns. And the unique thing about it is the fact that it also gives you a 50% resistance towards phantom damage. So any fire teams that's taking on stuff like say Atlas or the Oath Guardian, or even Guardian plus Oath, which is something that happens later on, she helps you out for that too. She's going to reduce the damage from that. She's one of the few sources where you even get any elemental resistance towards Phantom Element. So, there's that. And even in her base kits too and all that, she's still got very good combo rate, very good drain, very good, she even ups normal attack damage too. But she's got very good, like, protection towards specific elements. She's very good for that. She's highly used in malicious raids as well. To win malicious is a lot easier with her on the team. Trust me on that one. And Awakening just does her even better. She's one of, if not the most high priority Awakening target for fire. I have to say it like that. So, absolutely worth. Shamash is not one of those cases, however. She gets a lot tankier with her Awakening, but it all depends on if you need single target tanking anyways, and then there's some characters that could be possibly better at it, like say like Athena for light or Kingu. So it all depends if you really want to burn the eyes and make Shamash even better, but personally I say you could skip her. You could skip her. Frigg, she's a character that's just like Daki. She's like strong out the gate and gets stronger with Awakening. Very good for that. She's a very powerful healer. She gets some like debuff resistance, like some debuff coverage. She's just good. She's just so good. High priority Awakening target for when she hits the global side. If you're playing the Japanese version, definitely do that for her. Bear, if I could say the same thing, it's just the fact that her kit is just weird, where it has the descriptions and all that, but she gives such powerful buffs, so she actually is quite worth it. The Awakening just ups the power of all of that, so again, another case that could be a pretty decent priority target for Dark. It's just the fact that you may or may not have a spot for her on the team. So, Dark has a lot, and I mean a lot of very powerful characters later down the line. Her Awakening had to do something to give her something to compete with, which she can, it's just that, depending on the situation, she still might not use her anyway. So, again, can be a high priority target, depends on your team. Same case with Lug. Lug's kit, she's one of the best ability nukers for light. She gives insane burst speed to herself as well. And she has a stackable buff. But it sucks up her HP like crazy, and her Awakening offsets some of that. So, that said, Lug definitely should be awakened if you are using her. If you're not using her, then skip it. But she's also one of those characters that can also be part of the quad burst team I mentioned before. So there's that. And then Light has a setup where you can actually get like 5 bursts in a row during burst time. She's not part of it though. But Lug is still pretty good for Awakening. It just depends on if you use her or not, but she is a powerful character in her own right. And she's got a debuff to, I think it's the C-frame one too, so it's a rare defense debuff. But pretty good character to awaken if you are using her. If not, just ignore it. So her priority depends on how it is. Last one is Neptune, and I honestly gotta say, with her awakening, it kind of seems like they didn't know what to do with her, because she is kind of all over the place. I mean, that does give her a bit range of coverage. Like, she gets some, like, she already had some, like, burst capability for buffing and all that type of stuff, and then on top of that too, she also had some defensive ones and all that. With the awakening, it seems like they really just didn't know what to do with her. And then on top of that too, one of her key factors in her kit is an AoE, so there's that. She can also provoke stuff towards her, but the problem is that it's not guaranteed. And you would rather have guaranteed like somebody like Water Odin. So that said, I can't say she's worth I can't say she's worth the awakening, like not priority at least. She's not really mid priority awakening either. There's plenty of other water characters that can deserve an awakening more than her. But at least she's not a total waste if you awaken her. It's just that she's just all over the place. Tricky is definitely right for her typing. But that's all for the awakenings. Again, it's kind of all over the place, and it's not really a direct comparison for all these type of characters either. It's just that it's just a quick little overview of my takes on it, on this whole thing. But there definitely are some characters that are very, very worth the awakening. It's just that we have so many characters now that you're burning through all these eyes, so you have to pick and choose. Especially considering the fact that later points of the game, you're kind of forced to use elemental advantage, and some people may not want to raise all the elements, which is understandable. But if you're going to at least try to progress your main teams, you are going to need to up characters of other elements. So if you're, say, working on light, you need to raise darkness to help them out. If you're working on fire, you're probably going to need to work on wind, water, and thunder as well, because they're like connected thanks to their elemental weaknesses. So it's like you're going to need to work on multiple elements, and that means multiple awakenings, and that means more eyes. So again, this video is to try to do a little bit of clarity on who to try and focus on and who not to. But it probably would have been better to just try and do something closer to an awakening tier list. This is probably the one time I could say that a tier list would actually make a little bit more sense, because characters are very, very niche in this game, no matter what. Like, Soul is a very powerful healer, but in fights where you don't need a healer, you're not using Soul. So that's why I said tier lists usually don't work. This is the one time it probably would. Like, this is probably the one time a tier list probably would work. So I don't know if the community is going to try and come up with one for that, but if there is a tier list that you could probably sip and do, it's definitely for Awakening. Otherwise, I can't see a tier list being made for this game, ever. But, anyways, that's all for this. More videos will come soon. This is just something I wanted to try and get out there, because again, a lot of Awakening characters right now. There's going to be more on the way. Japanese side even announced others that aren't even on this list that they didn't even get to yet, like Amaterasu, who's long needed an update. She's long needed an awakening. She is the oldest character in the game that does not have an awakening, and that was year one. I think that was within the first few months of the game she came out. That's how outclassed Amaterasu is, and she's going to get an awakening eventually. There's others that they announced but didn't get to as well. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this will come soon. Again, this is still a matter of perspective as well too. Like, again, there's some high priority targets for awakening, but if you don't need them, you don't need them, so that's where you can ignore that. But again, you probably should awaken a lot of these characters, and if you're really trying to make the most of the magic value system, you're going to awaken them all anyway. It's just going to take a crap ton of eyes. But anyways, that's all for this. More will come soon, and take care.